Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Montana Museum of Art and Culture. I am Dr. Erin Costello-Wecker, Associate Professor of English and Irish Studies here at the University of Montana. And our event today is co-sponsored by the Irish Studies and Creative Writing programs. And that collaboration is really special because this is the first time that our two programs have ever collaborated. So thank you for coming and helping to make it all the more special. I want to thank my colleague, Professor Chris Dombrowski. He's the Director of Creative Writing. He saw the potential and magic in this event when I was pitching it to him, and he helped bring this dream to fruition. So it really was a true collaboration between the two of us. I also want to extend my deep gratitude to the Montana Museum of Art and Culture, specifically Dr. Raphael Chacon and Tracy. Where is Tracy? There you go. I don't have my glasses on, sorry. Your creativity and generosity of spirit are the reason why we're gathered in this really beautiful, special place. And it's so fitting for today's lecture. So to that point, I am honored to welcome Dr. Easkey Britton to Missoula and our campus. Dr. Britton, and I do mean this, made the intrepid cross-Atlantic, cross-country journey to be with us here all the way from Donegal, Ireland. Dr. Britton is a pioneering marine social scientist, surfer, writer, and ocean activist with a PhD in environment and society. Her research explores the intricate relationships between humans and nature, focusing on the health and well-being benefits of engaging with water environments. Dr. Britton combines science, art, activism to address social and environmental challenges. Through her books, such as Ebb and Flow and Saltwater in the Blood, she uses storytelling to make scientific concepts more accessible. Her work empowers women, fosters cross-cultural connections, and advocates for the environment and social change, drawing on her deep connections to the water. So please join me in offering a big sky welcome to Dr. Easkey Britton.
Thank you so much, Erin, for that gorgeous introduction. Does this sound okay? Everyone can hear me in this gorgeous space, right? Wow, I can't believe I'm here, in all honesty. It was definitely an unusual invite to get, with Missoula being, I think it's about 600 miles to the nearest ocean. So I'm a little bit out of my comfort zone. But thanks so much for having me, and then in this beautiful place, the Montana Museum of Art and Culture. It's just so inspiring to be able to speak in a space like this, and I had a chance to have a quick look around before I started, and it was wonderful just to see all the synergies and connections to some of the themes I want to talk about today around our connection with one another and water and the planet. Today's talk is a journey of sorts, weaving together threads of water connection, my own water heritage, our shared blue heritage, through a mix of story, embodied knowing, science, mythology, and even exploring language, just as a way to try to offer new insights into a way of being that just creates this kind of perspective shift in the world we find ourselves in. So be that through stories or practical embodiment that makes space for uncertainty and mystery, allowing us maybe to embrace a more thoughtful way of moving through the world and of being in relationship or kinship with the world around us, and acknowledging the river that runs through us all. And I'm sure, I'll be speaking to that theme a lot more. But I wanted to begin with acknowledging that by virtue of the history of settler colonialism, we stand on the Aboriginal territories of the Salish, Kasanka, and Kalishpe people. For thousands of years, they have been and continue to be the stewards of this land. And it is with gratefulness and respect I recognize the contributions, innovations, and contemporary perspectives of these sovereign native nations. We must honor the path they've always shown us in caring for this place, for the generations to come. Begin here. Am gui imamur am ton trehen am fuam mara. I am wind on ocean, I am swelling wave, I am roar of sea. So these are believed to be the first words ever uttered on what is today known as Ireland by Amergine, chief poet and druid of the Milesians, the very first people to settle that land. And later in the verse, now known as the Song of Amergine, is a line, I am because everything else is. I am everything and everything is in me. That these words were a declaration of the unity and interdependence of all things, a reminder that there was a time when my ancestors understood the wisdom of water, were attuned to the living world all around them. So what if restoring our relationship with the waters of the earth is a way to restore and heal ourselves? That's kind of setting the scene for what I want to dive into a little bit more deeply. But before we do, I find it just really helpful even for myself to down-regulate my own nervous system in these settings, to get grounded. We've all come from different spaces and places, so just taking a moment to allow ourselves to arrive in this space. I have an invitation for you, a very short guided practice, a visualization. Don't panic if you've never done this before, just take a moment to pause and breathe and notice yourself. So just really, it's a chance to move from that cognitive thinking headspace into a more embodied space. Taking a moment to connect with water, the water in our bodies especially. And a moment to just allow ourselves to be more present. So in your own time, and it can help for this exercise just to bring your focus inward if you want to gently close your eyes. And the first way I do to try to come back to myself is to bring my focus to my breath. So just taking a moment to simply notice our breath. Our own inner ebb and flow, mirroring the rhythm of the planet's tides, the rise and fall of rivers. And just noticing the movement of your breath without trying to change it. And on your next inhalation, following the breath into the body like a gently breaking wave. As the breath moves through your body, nourishing every single cell. And as you exhale, simply allowing the body to soften, let go, relax. Just taking a few more breaths and noticing the sensation and movement, the rise and fall of your own body. And I invite you now to recall a vivid water memory, a time that made you feel most alive. It could be very recently, or maybe it's from childhood. So just letting the memory of that time and place land in your body. Trying to recall it with all of your senses, noticing the sounds, the smells, the touch, the colors, textures, and then noticing how it feels to be there. Just taking a moment to be with that memory. And in your own time, returning to the breath, bringing awareness back into the body, into the space, the other bodies all around us. And when you're ready, if your eyes were closed, just blinking them open. Perhaps bringing some movement into your body. And again, just take a moment to notice now if there's any shift at all in how you feel from when you first sat down. I think my heart rate's definitely slowed a smidge. And that's, I guess, a really simple yet powerful and potent practice, just tapping into the power of our own imagination that just shows how powerful water can be, especially when it comes to memory and our experiences of water, because water is such a multisensory element. its power to bring us back into our bodies, maybe wherever we are. Those experiences and encounters with water live in our bodies and continue to shape who we are, even without us having to go to the water. It's a very powerful healing practice that's being used increasingly in care settings, especially where people can't access the water and the benefits it gives them in hospitals or in palliative care, for example. So what you just experienced there was a tiny moment of what's being coined more recently as blue mind. So that kind of calming, grounding effect water can have on our bodies and nervous system. So what if we lived more attuned to waters within us and all around us? And how might that help us through these times of grief, loss, and uncertainty? I'm a water person. I'm sure that's very obvious by now, and it will be by the end of the talk. But where I live, my homelands have been shaped and formed by water. And Donegal Bay was once an ancient tropical sea some 300 million years ago, teeming with marine life and corals, and over millions of years these formed this thick bed of limestone. And when I walk the mountains today that surround Donegal Bay, there are crinoids or sea lilies beneath my feet. It just blows my mind, that connection with water through time and its constant change and the shaping power and forces of it in terms of our planet and who we are. And Ireland has been repeatedly shaped by ice sheets during various ice ages that form the valleys that hold and are home to 70 major rivers, but thousands and thousands of other smaller rivers and streams that we probably couldn't even count. So in that, there's a real similarity to here, really being the place of rivers. And there's more than 12,000 lakes. And it's also home to some of the most powerful ocean waves in the world. Water for me is really how I orient myself. Wherever I am, I need to find the nearest body of water, introduce myself. It immediately reduces my anxiety, enhances that sense of connection when I'm somewhere that's unfamiliar. So as soon as I landed here, I asked the taxi driver, okay, which direction is the river? It was totally dark at about midnight or 1 a.m. So I waited till the morning, but I did go straight to the river. Water really does, form my state of, I guess I wouldn't say my identity, but my state of becoming, because I feel like that's what water has taught me. We're in this constant state of change. Our identities aren't static, they're fluid. My life has always been rhythmed by this constant return to the sea, to water. And here I find myself, although very far from the ocean, close to the power of water in other forms. The raging meltwater that will surge in the rivers, even creating a surf spot here in the middle of the town. Brennan's Wave. And then the ancient water that's held in some of the oldest glaciers in the world. And just imagine all that they hold deep in their core in terms of the memory of water. And I've just discovered perhaps that one of the greatest books written about rivers, Montana's Last Best River by Pat Mundy, could well be a possible descendant from shared ancestors on my mother's side, to be verified, but I like the idea. So my point being that everything is hitched to everything else. And the state of water I'm most familiar with is salt water, and the lens I use to understand the world is surfing. So I'm going to start with the medium that I'm most familiar with. I was born to pioneering surfing parents on a new moon during winter storms on the Atlantic coast of Ireland, and named after a wave with its roots in Irish for fish, Easkey. So it's perhaps a wonder I have been in the water surfing from before I can remember, standing on a surfboard since I could walk. And there are so many different dimensions to my encounter with the sea that are influenced by these temporal cycles of change, tidal, lunar, weather, seasonal, life cycle, from maiden to motherhood. To be a surfer, a skier, hiker, fly fisher, kayaker, is to be in conversation with the personal elements of a place, of a wave, a river, a mountain, creating its own narrative. To surf for me is to actively participate with the more than human living world, the ocean that breathes us all into existence. The sea shapes our experiences, feelings through its own powerful, non-human agency. As this shaping effect is what creates a sense of becoming. So for me, surfing is kind of paradoxically both about being fully engaged and focused, but also about letting go, surrendering a sense of groundedness and fluidness to floating free and being at the mercy of these untamable, changeable currents and flows. And the movement and touch of water and waves ignites something in the body, triggering a whole cascade of emotions and feelings of how we sense the world around us. And it's why water can be such a potent way to reconnect, to come back home to our bodies after stressful or even traumatizing experiences. I think this is key to where we find ourselves, especially in the world today, with such disconnection, dissociation, especially from our own bodies. And I think part of one of the most important first steps is coming back home to our bodies. So then we can act in a more meaningful way. And here's maybe where attunement comes in. So the title of today's talk is Blue Attunement. It's something I've been exploring a lot more deeply. And collective trauma expert Thomas Hubel defines attunement as the process of synchronizing and aligning with another person's feelings while remaining grounded. So a deep empathic connection that goes beyond surface level interactions. And attunement occurs not only between people, but with the living world around us. And blue attunement develops through our connection between ourselves and water. It's an awareness and responsiveness of the body of water we're interacting with. A deep form of listening. Instead of, there's some days I go surfing and I'm just like charged straight out there. I'm a time poor mom. But if I actually haven't taken a moment to first listen and tune in to the particular elements of that day, those conditions, the energy I'm showing up with, it tends not to connect well. I don't experience maybe those moments of flow. So what I'm talking about here is attunement and how we interact with the world around us. It's about creating that sense of, I suppose, presence and awareness. Really about beginning to align our mind and bodies with the energy of a snow-covered mountain, the glacier, a river, an ocean, and how that's constantly shifting. And we're continually adapting to it. And I'll get to how our bodies adapt a bit more in a moment. This ability to understand ourselves through water creates a dynamic language of its own, an embodied dialogue between two bodies of water, ourselves as a body of water and the body of water then that we're interacting with or encountering. So let me share with you a memory of one such unexpected moment of blue attunement while surfing off the coast of Donegal, and try and bring an immersive ocean experience into this room indoors with us today. My mind floats somewhere above the chaos, allowing my body to soften, moving back and forth like a frond of kelp. I am part of this wave energy. The turbulence rips through my hair as I grip a stalk of slippery seaweed and allow my body to be moved like water. Instead of feeling exhausted and beat up, I feel charged, the wave action pulsing through me. I tilt my head back and see underwater storm clouds dissipate as a milky light penetrates the churned white water. I push off the reef, rising easily as my lungs expand once again and my ears gently pop. My face breaks the surface. The foamy water hisses around me as trapped bubbles of air crackle and fizz. I breathe in the salty mist, and for a moment, all the world is sky and water. So something remarkable happens when we come into direct physical contact with water. And to be immersed in wild waters, the waters that still run free, is to feel transported to elsewhere. Author Lucy Jones, in her book Losing Eden, describes it as moving through a portal to another world. And we're not only moving from the solidness of land to the fluidness of water, but moving from the head into the body. And it's this, I believe, that offers such healing potential, restoring lost connections, bringing us back home to ourselves, not only inhabiting our bodies more fully, but the world. to be immersed in the Atlantic waters off the coast of Ireland is to be held in a mix of sweet rust-coloured bog water and golden green iodine of kelp forests. It is to enter into the territory of the wild Atlantic salmon, or at least it used to be, before the salmon stopped returning to their birth rivers. So since that wipeout, and the many waves I've been tossed off since then, those unexpected underwater immersions, integral part to the surfing experience, new science increasingly supports the indigenous understanding of ecological interconnection. So for example, the sea spray aerosols that I inhaled after I surfaced have a complex and unique chemical composition carrying within them the signature of all life in the ocean. And these aerosols contain the anti-inflammatory properties of these aerosols reduce inflammation in the body cells, modulating the cellular system involved in cell growth and immune functioning, and similar findings are being found for waterfalls and river rapids. Water leaves its fingerprint on us, to paraphrase Hawaiian surfer scientist Dr. Cliff Capono. The remarkable findings of his Surfer Biome project show how regular immersion in the ocean alters our microbiome, sharing bacteria found only on other marine mammals, so bringing us much closer to the reality of the Selkie myth. Perhaps not so much myth at all. If any is few familiar with that one, great. Yeah, so surfers, in his study, found that surfers possess distinct microbiomes compared to landlubbers. Arguably, this could be true depending on how much you immerse yourself in a river or up in the mountains or gardening and farming and getting your hands in the soil. But it really just underscores the profound connection between humans and the ocean and water, revealing how our bodies adapt to and are influenced by these aquatic environments. And just as water leaves its fingerprint on us, so too do we leave our imprint on water. I think I'm kind of speaking to the converted here, but by water in all its forms. But the water cycle, I think, as all of you will be keenly aware, living here in Missoula especially, is not some abstract, neatly drawn graph going on somewhere in the background in a tidy circular process in the background to our lives. In actuality, it's messy, dynamic, entangled, with all the body cycling through with all the water cycling through our bodies 17 times a year. I learned from Diné Navajo water protector Pat McCabe how water is flowing and being filtered through the body of every being, every living thing, through the consciousness of all life across all time. So our bodies are connected to the watersheds and bodies that we live, and water bodies that we live with and move through. So all these waters become part of us, and water remembers. Author Elif Shafak builds on this concept of water memory in her stunning book, There Are Rivers in the Sky. And that's what I want to draw upon now in a kind of more creative way to help illustrate the power of water to connect. And I wanted to weave together the stories of three people connected by a single water molecule as it journeys through time and place. And going back to the beginning, who we started with, Amrageen, before he could land in what is today known as Ireland, legend tells how the Tuatha Dé Danann, otherworldly beings, the very first inhabitants of that land, conjured a powerful storm to try to prevent him coming ashore. Amrageen turned his boat around out to sea and waited for the 9th wave before catching the wave and steering the boat safely to shore. So I first learned this story from my dad, Irish artist Barry Britton, who captured this moment in one of his iconic pen and ink surfing posters. And hidden in the detail of the sea spray, he depicts the unseen forces and creatures and energy of the ocean, and perhaps some of Amrageen's poetry, emotion, and fear that he had to surrender to as he committed to the wave. And at this moment of commitment, of taking the drop on the wave, there is this acceptance of the real possibility of failure, being swallowed whole by the wave. The lines of movement of wave rider and wave are woven together until there's no separation between self, vessel, and wave energy. Instead, all these components, human, surfboard or boat, weather process, swell, sea, wind, tide, lunar cycle, rocky reef, are the never-ending threads of a complex weave contributing to the story of the wave. The story of this mythical ninth wave continues to be told today. It's remarkable that 3,000 years later, it's still held in memory. And I'll return to this, of how even a cursory glance at Irish myth and folklore reveals its engagement with the non-human world, how essential that is for the uncertainty and climate catastrophe we face. So, back to Amergine, as he stepped from his boat after riding this ninth wave to shore some 3,000 years ago and began his powerful invocation, known as the Song of Amergine, a raindrop, small, spherical, and sacred, fell from the heavy, low-lying clouds scudding across a heaving Atlantic, a fall it had made many times before as it descended to earth and rose skyward again and again for billions of years. This time, a gust of wind caught it and carried it towards Amergine, who a moment later felt a drop of water on his lips. Both were changed forever. Remember this raindrop, for to quote Elif Shafak, inside this orb it holds the secret of infinity, a story uniquely its own. A trace of this moment will remain embedded in its elemental form. Some 2,500 years later, in the early 17th century, on the volcanic shores of the Hawaiian Islands, a baby girl came into this world, riding the rush of water like a wave from her mother's womb. And in the amnion was a drop of water that long ago, far away on a much colder island, was once a raindrop, carrying within it the memories of its previous lives, like a fingerprint. Born to Polynesian royalty, Princess Kaneamuna came into this world with the physical memory we all share of what it means to be home in water. When born into the world, we carry birth trauma, that separation from the sacred water. Kaneamuna understood that to be healed and become whole, we must return to that watery world. Her lifelong love of surfing was so great that on her deathbed, her surfboard was placed alongside her in her burial cave, the oldest known surfboard to be discovered. Centuries later, and 15 years after the devastating 2004 tsunami in Southeast Asia that claimed over 250,000 lives, in one of the hardest hit regions, the southern coast of Sri Lanka, where in some places 80% of lives lost were women, there remains a legacy of intergenerational trauma and fear of the sea. So how can the ocean be transformed from a place of loss and danger to one of healing? How can our relationship be transformed from a fearful one to a loving one? Sea Sisters is a remarkable example of how psychological transformation can occur even in places of trauma. Established in 2017 with the purpose of fostering a love for the ocean for those who are most excluded from it, women and girls, through their swim and surf programs, they cultivate this blue attunement, equipping women with the skills needed to make a living in surf tourism, an almost exclusively male-dominated domain. One of Sea Sisters' early members, Mona, had avoided going to the beach for years, a place of tragedy, fear, and loss, where she had lost her mother during the tsunami. But with encouragement from her friends, she joined her first surf lesson, and as she rode her first wave, lying on her belly, feeling the movement of the wave under her body, she began to laugh. And a drop of water from the breaking wave splashed into her mouth, with the aura of a Hawaiian princess impressed upon it. Later, Mona described how there was some kind of energy coming into her heart. Eventually, the ocean and surfing became Mona's way to overcome her fears, manage stress in her life, taking her 2 daughters with her into the sea, breaking a cycle of intergenerational trauma. And perhaps this same water drop also passed through here. And perhaps it fell during a heavy snowfall in the mid-19th century in Bute, a place I've learned from Erin, once known as the 33rd Irish county, when Irish immigrants, it is true, when Irish immigrants escaping on Garta Mór, the Great Hunger, flocked to the mining town during the gold rush and later to the copper mines, mines that worked this drop of water and all water available to its limits, polluting the water and the earth and leaving Berkeley pit filled with water that's so toxic birds die when they land on it. And here, then, I counted next to me in this exhibition room of Christy Hager's, and it just felt like this wonderful synergy of the work that she's done around the pit, around water and our bodies and our relationships, and the importance and power of healing those lost and broken connections, especially with water, and the aliveness you feel when we plunge into a healthy body of water. So it seemed fitting. I think what I wanted to show by telling those stories, and you can judge for yourself which parts are true or not, but almost all of it actually is true. But it speaks to how interwoven we are with one another. And yet, as ecofeminist Estelle Cruz describes in her PhD, the search for a more authentic connection to nature is itself a product of modernization. The very definition of nature and the language used to describe it in English poses a problem, leading to otherness. So what if, instead, we recognize our entanglement, our kinship, that is so evident in the language of indigenous cultures the world over, especially here? Irish philosopher John O'Donoghue writes in Anam Cara how in Celtic worldview there is no dualism between self, sensus, and nature. He writes how the human skin is porous. The world flows through your senses. Indeed, there's a beautiful Irish phrase, fitta fuita, which O'Donoghue translated as woven into and through each other. By this he meant there's no separation of the sensus, self, nature, or indeed between the eternal and living worlds. Checking on. How are we for time? We're good. We're coming to the end, anyways. Yeah, so back to that beautiful Irish phrase, fitta fuita, woven into and through each other. I think the act of surfing could be framed in a similar way, perhaps. It's an active engagement with the agency and animacy of the earth that brings the outer world into our inner way of being, thinking, and doing. So I wonder, what might that be for you, if not surfing? And take a moment to think about that. And author Sophie Strand, in her activism and writing, challenges the mythologies of our dominant culture. So myth, she shared, used to be context relevant, a relational experience, this dialogue with a specific place, and it lived in breath and community. Myths were created to become a vehicle for ecological wisdom, teaching us when to grow, when to gather, how to create community, teaching us how to inhabit a specific ecology, particular place. And Irish myths are very much the realm of earth and water deities associated with death and rebirth cycles, these elemental messengers who are disruptors of the status quo. Similarly, Donna Haraway writes in When Species Meet about the power and importance of companion species, how they change our behavior as we do them, revealing how we emerge from relationships. So imagine the ocean, river, mountains as our companion species. I really liked that when I came across it because I have a great affinity to the salmon. It's one of my companion species. As I mentioned, my name Easkey has its origins in ancient Irish for fish, and I'm named after an important salmon river in Ireland that creates this beautiful wave where it flows into the sea. So it's my father's favorite surf spot. And in Irish, salmon is known as Bradán Fasa, the salmon of knowledge or wisdom. So there was a time when my ancestors understood the wisdom of other species, a time when we listened to the more than human world, and somehow we have forgotten. My name reminds me that my identity is tied to the identity of the salmon, that all our identities are inextricably linked to the rivers and the sea, that we've all been shaped and formed by water. So the well-known and enduring Irish myth of the salmon of knowledge, who knows how old it is, as with myth, it was passed down orally for thousands and thousands of years. It's one of many Irish folk tales or mythologies that tells of how knowledge is gained from other than human perspectives. The story tells of the source of all otherworldly knowledge that is believed to be held in a sacred well of wisdom, surrounded by 9 hazel trees that are the source of inspiration. And 5 sacred salmon swim in the well, eat the hazels when they fall into the water, bestowing the salmon with prophetic insight and wisdom. And of course, the salmon then journey out into the world and yet always return to the source of that wisdom. So the myth teaches us, among many things, the power of an ecotone, a concept first introduced to me by Sophie Strand. An ecotone is a place of transition and tension, rich in biodiversity. For example, an intertidal zone, or where a river meets the sea, where forests meet a lake. And also inherent in the story is a deeply ecological understanding of life, interspecies dependencies, the interconnection of all living things. And only recently has conventional science begun to realize that ancient knowing, acknowledging complex interdependencies between salmon, rivers, forests, and the health of the ocean. From the salmon, we also learn about homing. That's something I came across recently that really landed with me too. So the salmon's ability to return to its birth river, and we still don't understand how and why. Clarissa Pinkola Estes, author of Women Who Runs with the Wolves, defines this as the instinct to return, to go to the place we remember. It is the ability to find, whether in dark or in daylight, one's home place, where thought or feeling can be sustained. And this relates to the Irish concept dúchas. There's no word in the Irish language for landscape, so the closest we have is dúchas, often used to mean heritage or place connection, but place connection in a very intimate way, a place that you understand, that you know intimately, that knows you in return. And as Michael Cronin argues in a stunning bilingual book, Irish and Ecology, An Gaeilge agus an Ecolaíocht, it is precisely this capacity to begin to view the planet from other than human perspectives that is such a necessary skill in dealing with imminent climate catastrophe and societal breakdown. Now, to bring this all back to a more embodied way of knowing, if you do have water near you, I invite you to take a sip, and if you don't, simply notice the water in your body, the saliva in your mouth. I'm going to take a sip of water. And take a sip or swallow, and as you follow the water into your body, consider the journey through time and place that water has been on. And perhaps maybe even feel some kind of energy coming into your heart. And Elif Shafak reminds us that water remembers, and it's humans who forget. The journey of this drop of water reminds us of the unifying power of water, how we cannot be well in a sick sea. To heal ourselves and restore our waters, we must restore our relationship with water through cultivating our blue attunement. And Sophie Strand reminds us too that we also desperately need to try to be the medicine. If we are made of a web of relations, she asks, where is your ecological niche? Where is your dúchas? Perhaps take a moment to consider what that may be for you, for each of us. Where is your dúchas? And finally, I leave you with this inquiry to explore. If water is medicine, how can we, you and I, be medicine for the water, rivers, and seas? Thank you. flying on time.
That was,
Use your excellent voice. There we go.
so thank you. That was transcendent. But we have time for a few questions if anybody has something that they wanted to ask Easkey. Does anybody have a question?
Oh, wow.
Yes, I'm going
Are
to
we
bring the
doing-
microphone.
Thank you. You didn't mention how cold the Atlantic Ocean is near Ireland.
This is true. No, it is. It's pretty cold. Well, that's what creates that feeling of aliveness. You know, cold water therapy, big craze now. It does take a lot of determination, and also the amazing improvement in wetsuits we've had in recent times. But yeah, and when my father started, there wasn't even any wetsuits.
But she even forgot a bathing suit, and I am taking her up to Glacier, and she said she's going to
I
get in
just
like
have to find
McDonald's.
other ways to get in.
I will report back.
Yeah. I
Does
think
anybody else
that's
have a
proper
question?
cold.
Yes. Are there any other questions? Yeah.
I more of just have a statement. If you have the chance, I would recommend hiking up to Grinnell Glacier, all the way up to the glacier and see the water. It's like cloud.
Amazing. It sounds like I'm going to have to come back again. Thank you.
Any other local
Yeah.
things people want to share, or connections, or questions? Yeah.
I'm desperate to get back out into the sunshine. I'm so impressed. So many people turned up.
It's not a local thing, but can you talk a bit about the status of salmon in Ireland? And
Yeah, well, the status of all Atlantic salmon is really not good. A friend of mine is a fishery scientist specializing in salmon restoration. There are a few rivers where it's, to be honest, to put it bluntly, it's quite likely that even in my lifetime they might be gone, as we know them. Yeah. So there's a lot of efforts to try and restore them, but I think it's at that tipping point, perhaps, that we've gone past. And now the added effects of the warming of both the rivers and the ocean, it's really hard to know. And so that raises the question then, isn't it, of our relationship also with grief and how we don't do that well in our modern societies. Arguably, maybe Ireland has a slightly different approach, but it's a whole other story. But yeah, there is so much we will lose and are losing, and I think it's very important to also, acknowledge that and be with that, and as well as looking at the importance of all that we can save. But yeah, it's a bit of a heartbreaker, that one. Yeah. But who knows? Nature is also full of incredible surprises when it comes to recovery if given a sliver of a chance. But yeah, we're doing a shocking job of looking after rivers and lakes in Ireland at the moment. Yes, John.
I'd like you to share with this group the stuff you were talking about last night, where the background different surfers had the same characteristics of sea animals.
Okay, back to the Selkie myth. I was going to actually put the Selkie myth in there. So this, idea that we take on the form of, typically a seal. These Selkies, when in water and on land, then return to human form, but we always keep our seal skins close. That's the connection, that tie to water. And if we lose our seal skin, we lose that connection. But so in a way, I wondered now with the research done by my friend and colleague, Dr. Cliff Capono, who's an incredible surfer and biochemist, whose PhD was the Surfer Biome Project, looking at how our microbiome changes through this regular immersion in water, these different surf breaks around the world. And so that we have then shared the same bacteria with other marine mammals, are found only on, seals and whales and dolphins. So it's that fact, when we come out of the water and we feel different, we actually are physiologically, which blows my mind. We're only scratching the surface, but I also find it fascinating the more I learn about this sort of new emerging science in this area of blue health that I research in, how it's speaking very closely to the teachings that are already there in so much of the myth and the folklore. So that's only something I began to unpack, especially my book, Ebb and Flow, and then increasingly more and more, it's kind of hitting me in the face. It seems really obvious. Yeah.
Dr. Britton,
Yeah, Raphael.
about 15 years ago, the sculptor Maya Lin made an enormous model of this, a three-dimensional impression of the oceans to bring attention to the peril that the oceans were facing 15 years ago. And I guess I wonder if you have a sense of what the scale or the magnitude is of that peril that our oceans are confronting today.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, it's challenging. It was challenging even to write. There's both of my books. Some of them are here today. Saltwater in the Blood is a memoir speaking to those lessons learned from surfing. And Ebb and Flow, it's this deeper exploration of our relationship with water. And I wrote a lot of it actually was during COVID and then during pregnancy, so the grief is a big theme throughout the book, because it's, as I was writing it, I don't know of what are we going to be passing on to future generations. And so the state of the ocean, it's our life support system. It gives us the air we breathe, over 60% of the oxygen in the atmosphere. It's absorbed most of the warming that's completely altering its pH. It's been reduced, I think, by as much as 30%. So a mass of water that big to alter the pH even a smidge is enormous. So without going totally doom and gloom, it's quite scary. And yet there's something to I think the importance of needing to know more and the research and the mapping. And yet a part of me also feels like there's this huge importance too to hold and keep the mystery of it. The ocean being that place of dreaming, of holding the collective unconscious, the unknowability of it, which is what gives us that sense of wonder and awe and humility as a species. So I think that is also really important. This is a huge push now for do more science, which I fully support, but it must be tempered as well, which is where I think art comes in, is so important, and poetry and story.
Irish to keep the mystery going.
Yeah, I know. Can have yeah.
So is there, anybody have one final question? I want to thank you all for coming. As Easkey said, it's beautiful out, so it means the world to us that you were willing to come in.
Get to the river.
At the table back there are both copies of Saltwater in the Blood and Ebb and Flow that Easkey is happy to sign for you. And Margaret.
Yeah, Mila Margaret. Thank you so much,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks.